When I watched the draft last night, I found myself saying good pick after nearly every selection. This class may not have the star power seen in other years, but I see many of these players having good, solid careers. That being said, I do have a list of my biggest winners, and some of the teams I highlight may surprise you. Before we get into it, make sure to leave a like on this video and subscribe. I'm trying to hit 2,000 subscribers before next season, and your support goes a long way. With all of that being said, let's get into the video. My first winner is the Washington Wizards, who walked away with Alex Sarr, Bub Carrington, and Keyshawn George. Before declining to work out with the Hawks, Alex Sarr appeared to be the consensus #1 pick. He's been compared to Jaren Jackson Jr., and when you watch him play, it's easy to see why. At 7'1", Sarr is very agile for his size, which will allow him to hold his own against smaller, quicker players, and he can use his length to protect the paint. While he's quite raw offensively, he's shown flashes of a handle and jump shot. At the very least, Sarr should be an effective rim runner, lob threat, and play finisher, but if he can develop those other skills, Washington would be thrilled. The Wizards' next pick was used on Bub Carrington out of Pittsburgh. Carrington is one of the youngest players in the draft, and he's a terrific offensive player. He can create his own shot off the dribble, and his 6'8" wingspan gives him a high release point that's difficult for guards to contest. He's also tremendous in the pick and roll, which should pair nicely with Alex Sarr. He will need to improve as an inside finisher, and there are concerns about his defense, but again, Carrington is extremely young. With the possibility of Tyus Jones leaving in free agency, Carrington could receive lots of playing time as a rookie, allowing him to grow and learn from his mistakes. With their final pick in the first round, Washington took Keyshawn George from Miami. George stands at 6'8" with a 6'10" wingspan, and he shot over 40% from 3 in college. 3-and-D players are extremely valuable in today's NBA, and if his skills translate, George can play that role for the Wizards. He's also shown flashes as a passer, and while he's no point guard, any team would want a shooter that can make good reads within the flow of the offense. Amidst all these selections, the Wizards did give up Deni Avdija, however they got quite the haul for him. They received the 14th pick, which they used on Carrington, a first in 2029, 2 second-rounders, and Brogdon, who could be flipped for another pick. I do like Deni, but Washington clearly didn't see him in their future plans, and they got a great return for him. It's also worth noting that next year's draft has plenty of talented wings, so the Wizards could find a replacement for Deni this time next year. Speaking of Deni Avdija, the next team I want to discuss is the Portland Trailblazers. Before the draft, it was reported that several teams were trying to trade up and select Donovan Clingan. Portland was one of those teams, but luckily for them, Clingan fell right into their hands at number 7. While the Blazers do have DeAndre Ayton, it's unclear if he's their long-term answer at center. Although Ayton is a better scorer than Clingan is nearly 6 years younger and projects to be the more well-rounded of the two. At 7'2", 265, Clingan is a big body who can roll hard, finish around the rim, and set up his teammates. There are questions about his lateral quickness, but at his size, Clingan will take up lots of space and at the very least be a good rim protector. Truthfully, I don't see Clingan becoming a star. However, if you want to build a championship team, you have to bring in winning players. In his 2 years at UConn, Clingan won 2 national championships, and that means a lot. He earned the trust of a legendary coach in Dan Hurley, played his role perfectly, and proved he could play alongside other talented players. This Blazers team has plenty of youth, and when that youth begins to blossom, Clingan can be a great complementary piece for Portland going forward. I also view Deni Avdija in the same light. I don't see Deni as a future star, but he's an all-around player that can impact winning. He can space the floor for Scoot, Simons, and Shaedon Sharpe, and he's shown an ability to handle the ball both in transition and in the half court. He was also one of the few defensive bright spots for Washington last year, so bringing in Avdija on top of Clingan should bolster Portland's defense. The Blazers are putting together a nice young core, and they have the potential to add to it. Portland has 2 second-round picks to use today, and they could possibly trade guys like Ayton and Jeremy Grant for more assets. The third team that I want to talk about is a team that initially surprised me with their pick, the Memphis Grizzlies. As I mentioned, there were several teams that wanted to trade up and draft Donovan Clingan, and Memphis was one of those teams. The Grizzlies have a talented roster, but ever since Steven Adams got injured, they've been without their glue guy. Adams was one of the best rebounders in the league, he was an underrated passer, and most importantly, he was an elite screen setter. His screens freed up tons of space for Ja Morant, which allowed him to attack downhill and wreak havoc. While I didn't see any mock drafts sending Edey to Memphis, the pick shouldn't have surprised me with Clingan off the board. Edey is 7'4" and weighs 300 pounds, so like Adams, he should be a great screen setter in the NBA. He'll also grab a ton of rebounds, which will help Memphis close out defensive possessions. Sure, Edey isn't the passer that Adams is, but he's a far better scorer than Adams. Edey is a big body with soft touch, and he could use those skills to put pressure on opposing bigs and possibly put them in foul trouble. On top of that, Edey shot 70% from the free throw line in college, while Adams shot 36% in his last year with Memphis. The concerns with Edey have to do with his defense. At his size, Edey is bound to deter players in the paint, but there's a fear that he'll struggle to guard quicker players in space. I understand that fear. However, Edey has a tremendous work ethic and high motor, and as a result he's improved as a player year in and year out. He also did better than expected in the lane agility test and shuttle run at the combine, plus Edey is motivated to prove his doubters wrong. Edey had plenty of haters in college, and after getting drafted 9th overall, I saw some borderline disrespectful reactions towards the pick. Sure, Memphis could have drafted a younger player with more upside, but they had a need at center. On top of that, Memphis is a perfect spot for Edey, and I see him benefiting from playing next to Jaren Jackson and John Morant. I'm not even a huge Zach Edey fan, but I'm rooting for him to prove all his doubters wrong. Finally, my last big winner is the Utah Jazz, who took Cody Williams out of Colorado and Isaiah Collier from USC. Williams is 6'8" with a 7'1" wingspan, and he has the potential to be a talented all-around wing. In a recent interview with The Ringer, he said that with his physical tools he wants to make the most of his defensive potential. He also mentioned that he's been working to improve his handle, and that whatever role he has in the NBA, he's going to play it to the best of his ability. That's a very mature answer from Cody, and you can tell that his older brother Jalen has given him plenty of advice about playing in the NBA. A lot of young guys come into the league and worry about their minutes or how many shots they're getting, rather than doing whatever the team asks of them. Cody seems to care about the team above anything, and that's exactly what the Jazz need. Utah already has an all-star in Lauri Markkanen, they have a number of young players, and they have control of 15 first-rounders from 2025 through 2031. The Jazz are slowly bringing in an influx of talent, but having talent doesn't matter if it can't coexist. While Cody Williams has tons of upside, he seems to have the unselfish, team-first mentality that every organization welcomes. This was a great start to the night for Utah, and things only got better when they took Isaiah Collier 29th overall. Collier was the #1 high school player in the class of 2023, and in college he averaged 16 points and 4 assists on 49% shooting from the field. He's able to put pressure on the defense with his driving ability, and when you combine that with his playmaking, you can see the flashes of a dynamic lead guard. His decision-making wasn't the best at USC, but it improved over the course of the season. During the first 16 games of the year, Collier averaged 4.1 assists to 3.6 turnovers, and over the final 11 games, his assists went up to 4.5, and his turnovers dropped to 2.8. With his ability to attack downhill, he'd be a great fit next to Lauri Markkanen, and I believe he could play alongside Utah's current guards Keontae George and Colin Sexton. The big swing factor with Collier is going to be his jump shot. At USC, he made just under 34% of his threes, and he shot 67% from the free throw line. The jumper is not broken though, and I believe he'll develop into a respectable shooter down the line. I'm going to call it now, Isaiah Collier will be the steal of this draft, and many teams will regret letting him slide this far. Anyways, that's going to be all for today's video. Make sure to leave a like, subscribe, and leave your thoughts down in the comments section below. With all of that being said, I'm out, and I'll see you in the next video.